Welcome to Sailing Seasons, our adventures of sailing our little boat on the big lake.
In this episode, we will share with you the first part of our Memorial Day weekend experience. We arrived at the boat Friday evening, just in time to bring everything on board before nightfall, and then we all found our space to crash before falling asleep. The next morning turned out to be a little foggy, and we were concerned that we may not be able to get our first sail of the season in. As we were getting ready for the day, we noticed that our shore power electrical cord had become pinched between two sleeves on the pylon that allows the pier to float up or down. After speaking with one of our dock neighbors, we were told that the lake had been rising and falling as much as 9 inches, which is definitely not typical for this area. It was interesting that the pylon was free to move up and down in the inner sleeve, but the outer sleeve was not budging. After speaking with the marina, a dockhand came by with a large crowbar and freed the cord. Fortunately, there was no damage to our power cord. Later that day, we made sure that when we plugged our cord back in, we kept it clear of the dock pylon and the sleeves to avoid any future issues. But before we started our day, it was time to grab some breakfast and discuss the plan. We decided to wait for the winds to pick up and for the remaining fog to burn off before heading out on the water, so we took a walk out to the lighthouse.
Shorebirds?
Again, we were amazed by how high the water level was for this time of year on Lake Michigan. On our way back, we encountered some goslings along with some very protective parents. After letting the motor warm up, we head out of the marina into the harbor and towards Lake Michigan with the intent to raise the sails.
So honestly, tell me, as we were exiting the mouth of the harbor, what were you feeling?
I was a little nervous. It's been a couple seasons since we've had the boat in the water, and the wind was a little stiffer than what I would have preferred for our first sail.
Well, the wind was projected to build throughout the day. It wasn't quite to its windiest point yet, but you can tell the boat is definitely rocking. The waves, there weren't a lot of waves, but there was just a rolliness to the seas. But as far as the weather,
it was a beautiful day.
It was a beautiful day. Plenty of sun, and it was great to be out on the water. So as soon as we make it through the mouth of the harbor, what are we looking for?
Always the green and red buoy markers.
Right, yeah, the green and red buoy markers sit about 3/4 of a mile from the mouth of the harbor. So we usually set our course for the midway point between them with the intent to raise the mainsail.
You hear this so many times, but it's really difficult to portray the motion that we're feeling on the boat as it bobs up and down between the rollers on the water. The wind was really only blowing at about 8 to 10 knots when we started, but it felt much rougher than that.
Today, as we headed out, we chose to head for the green buoy marker, which is towards the south, as it allowed us to steer into the rolling waters and then turn the boat north into the wind so we could raise the mainsail.
After raising the mainsail, we set our course and then idled our engine and put it in neutral, leaving it on just in case we needed it. Once we completed a few tacks through the wind, the Badger passenger and car ferry that runs between Manitowoc, Wisconsin and Ludington, Michigan came into view. We always make sure to give Badger plenty of room as she comes into the harbor to avoid getting a warning signal. So we set a course that takes us in the opposite direction until she passes.
Niles, are you enjoying your phone?
The winds were picking up, so even with just the mainsail out, we were able to maintain plenty of speed through the water. As we continued to get our bearings for our first sail of the season and remember how everything works before furling out the headsail. We'll need to work on adjusting the main to get some of those creases out, but for now, we're content to be out on the water. We practiced a few more tacks as we set our course to pass behind the Badger Ferry. Finally, it's time to furl out our head sail. We quickly pick up a few more knots of speed after putting out the head sail, and the boat heels over a little more, but it's still fairly comfortable. Everything checked out with the head sail. We were able to unfurl, set it, tack through the wind and set it on the other side, and furl it back in without any issues. After not being on the water for a few years, you always wonder if you will remember everything you need to when you go back out for the first time in a new season.
The mainsail looked to be in good condition, but it definitely needs some tuning and trimming to get out all the creases and wrinkles. Something we'll continue to work on the remainder of the season. It almost looks like the lighthouse is floating on the water. After dropping the mainsail, we head back into the harbor and make our way to the marina, and eventually to our slip, content that we completed our first sail of the season. As we make our way into the marina, everyone prepares for their responsibility to dock the boat safely, getting lines ready, making sure the boat hook is available, verifying which direction the wind is coming out of, and talking through the procedures of throttling the engine down, putting it in neutral and possibly reverse, if needs be, to get the boat in the slip. It always seems like we're going so slow, but things can change quickly, and it's best to be prepared. After safely docking and tying off at our slip, it is time to get our power cord out and plug back into the shore power, one of the great benefits of being at a marina. One last double check to make sure everything looks nice and tidy. We headed to Two Rivers and strolled along one of Wisconsin's most beautiful beaches. Even though the temps were in the 70s, the water was frigid, but that didn't stop some people from taking a dip in Lake Michigan. After being out on the water all day, it was more comfortable to feel the sway of the swing than to stand on the solid ground. Even after we got off the water, the winds continued to pick up through the late afternoon, as noted by this large American flag in the parking lot. Here's a summary of our track for the day and some of the details that we logged.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Sailing Seasons. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to catch more of our sailing adventures with our little boat on the big lake.